Hi, welcome to Pop Culture Maniacs' podcast. As usual, it's me, Kieran, and with me, Jean. And this time we'll be talking about LGBT representation in film and TV. So, when it comes to the subject, I think when I say LGBT representation, I'm thinking sort of like the big blockbusters. So, I think the influence on this discussion is like with Disney. They keep saying like, "This is our new gay character." And it really amounts to nothing. They want the brownie points for being inclusive, whilst also not offending, say, the markets in like China, Russia, or the Middle East.
Yeah, they want to be able to speak to Western audiences and say, look what we have, and then be able to easily edit that person out should they need to.
Yes, I think you've seen with Disney, they keep saying this is the first LGBT gay character in our films, and then besides not mountains and nothing, it's like once, maybe twice, you could say, okay, fair enough. After that, it's you can't keep pulling this trick.
Nope.
Yeah, because of it. Because obviously, I think it started with the thief in Beauty and the Beast, the remake, wasn't it? And then it just kept going, like things like Onwards and
you had Avengers Endgame and the Star Wars moment.
Yeah.
Although, to their credit, Eternals does have a very clearly openly gay character in it.
Yeah.
Who has a family and is married, and I think it's pretty much impossible to edit him out of the film. Hopefully, we'll see when it comes out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's sort of like that's the sort of it's the big international market trying to please two audiences at the same time.
Yeah, and I've said this before here and probably in print too, but when you have as much money as Disney does and you have as much IP as Disney does, you shouldn't have to play ball like that. You should have the guts to just do it and say, here's the movie. You don't want it, you don't want it, you don't get it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I agree. Because I'm perfectly happy to see like a major gay character and it's in a big action blockbuster of some sort. Like comic books, they have had characters who have been who have come out.
Yeah, I mean, right now the big kerfuffle is Lois Lane and Clark Kent's son in the newest imprint of Superman has just come out as bisexual, and of course everyone's clutching their pearls and freaking out because it's ruined their childhoods. But it's doable. There's characters, and we might be jumping a little ahead here, but yeah, the most important thing when you're creating an LGBTQ character is that shouldn't be their sole defining trait. It shouldn't be they're the gay character, they're the gay superhero, they're the gay this, that. It's when you make that their entire identity that things fall apart from a narrative perspective, from a character perspective, and you can't service them at the same level you do other characters.
So yeah, I think with I think when it comes to LGBT representation, it does tend to be a lot better in indie films and TV these days, because certainly indie films budgets aren't so big, so they don't have to risk so much. So because obviously I think we've seen quite a lot of LGBT films fairly recently, like what's it, Love, I wrote down the list, like Love, Simon, Miseducation of Cameron Post, Blue is the Warmest Color, which is a French film, and Kids Are All Right. So you do get those sort of
and there's lots of thoughts in the community on a couple of those. On how you should not do those kind of movies. But yeah, it's definitely easier for an indie film, particularly because stereotyping, but those tend to be the films that want awards recognition, and there's still truth to the idea that if you have gay tortured characters in a film, this season you've got the new Benedict Cumberbatch film, which I suspect is going that route as well. And he's getting a lot of awards notice for it. And so it's that thing that if you torture the gay character still, you can probably get at least a Golden Globe nomination, if not more, for it.
Yeah. I was going to, so I know we'll probably get to this point, but may as well get to it now. It's yes, it does tend to be quite a popular idea for a straight actor to play a gay character, because you get awards like or nominations, or like Brokeback Mountain being a famous example of it.
Mm-hmm.
And because obviously that is the big debate at the moment: should gay characters be only played by gay actors?
Yeah, and people have come out on both sides of that. It's often the straight actors saying that they should be able to, and someone like Russell T Davies came out earlier this year. He had a really great miniseries about the AIDS crisis in England, which brilliant miniseries. So Russell T Davies said he's only going to cast out actors in queer roles from now on, because in his point of view, they have the experience in the background to play these characters, and straight actors can't really pull from that experience. I'm not sure, as an out person myself, I don't necessarily agree with that completely. I get where he's coming from, in the sense that out actors tend to have a harder time in Hollywood getting roles than their straight counterparts. And so to allow out actors to play out characters, it gives them a sense of ownership and a chance to get seen in a way that, casting Benedict Cumberbatch, everyone knows him. He's doing fine. He doesn't need the money. It gives these other actors a chance to prove themselves. But again, it's acting. And I don't think we should, have a hard and fast rule when it comes to gay characters. Trans characters, on the other hand, is a whole other bag.
Yeah.
And you should not have a cis actor playing a trans character at all.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously that was like controversy a few years ago, because Scarlett Johansson was cast to play a trans character.
Yeah, she seems to find herself in a lot of those issues.
Yeah, because I figure obviously it depends on the role, because I'm guessing, well, I'm probably going to have to tread very, very carefully here. What if, say, you got a role of a trans character, say, someone, man, say, obviously, as you can tell, I'm not too used to these issues. So I'm going.
Well, here's a good example. So Laverne Cox on Orange is the New Black.
Yeah,
she's a trans actress, and part of Orange is the New Black is they had flashbacks to the original life, or the earlier lives of these characters.
I see.
And so in her flashbacks, she's lucky in that she has an identical twin brother. And so he was able to play her character before she transitioned. And in that regard, they've had issues like that before. And I obviously am not trans, so I can't really speak for the trans community, but I feel like it's something where you'd have to talk to the actor and figure out what they're comfortable with. If they're comfortable portraying their character prior to transition, then they should be absolutely allowed to. Otherwise, you could look at casting a cis actor in that role and then having the trans actor play it later. But it's definitely something that should be left up to the actor.
I see.
I see.
Yeah, I see. Because that was the sort of question I was going to ask. What if how do you portray before the transition?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is to let the trans actor be the one.
Yeah,
because I know there are some actors who are not comfortable portraying their previous gender expression. I know some who are. So it should really be up to the actor to make that decision with the director and the writer.
Yeah, sure. I was going to just quickly say, because as well, because admittedly I have no problem with gay actors playing straight characters. I think a few examples I could think of. I think some were like Barney Stinson and Bulldog from How I Met Your Mother and Frasier. They were deliberately made to be like aggressively with their sort of aggressively
their straightness, their heterosexuality.
Yes.
Yeah, and even on Frasier too, you had David Hyde Pierce, who played a much more effeminate presenting straight man on the show.
Yeah.
And he's out. Well, he wasn't out at the time, but now he's very much out. So you had that too. So if they allow out actors to play straight parts, which is still unfortunately a rarity.
Yeah.
You know, then there should be no barriers
Yeah.
on who can play a gay role or a straight role, but
Yeah.
you got to see that reciprocity across to
Yeah.
really make that argument.
Yeah. I think when it comes to say the whole with LGBT people, I think because you obviously get the people obviously have the stereotypes. Something like if you like watch Family Guy, you see the stereotypes like all gay men are sort of very effeminate, all gay women are very butch, but obviously in reality you obviously get that, like everyone else, they run the whole gamut of society. You get like people, you might get like gay men who are very sporty, very into sort of typical in quotation marks manly things, and I'm sure you have met. There's gay women who have, again run the whole gamut. Some that are quite tomboyish to people that are very effeminate.
Right. And, a show like The L Word, for all its problems, and there's so many, it managed to show a very wide spectrum of women who were, or lesbian and bisexual, at a time when there wasn't that type of broad representation. And of course, you had a cast mixed with straight actresses and out actresses, and it was very groundbreaking for that, representation.
Yeah. I don't even know when it comes to LGBT representation. I think there has been a gradual evolution because remember back in like say 90s and noughties, gay jokes were pretty obvious. And admittedly, when I was at school, it's something obviously I'm not proud of, but I think throwing gay as an insult was pretty commonplace. I did it myself. I'm not saying I'm just saying that's unfortunately what it was like back then. But now
Yeah, I mean, that's just what the culture was at. And the moment everyone looks back on obviously is Ellen coming out.
Yeah.
And is kind of like the moment where things changed. But I feel like a lot of people forget that she came out to this insane ratings on her show or sitcom.
Yeah.
And there was another season of her sitcom where the ratings like plummeted, there were protests, and then she couldn't work again for a long time.
Yeah.
She got blacklisted. Laura Dern got blacklisted. Oprah was getting death threats for like it was this huge cultural flashpoint when we look back on it, but there were really bad consequences for the people involved from a career standpoint. Yeah. And so it wasn't till probably the early 2000s when you really started to see LGBT really LGBT characters on television a bit more regularly when they weren't being murdered quickly, which still happens far too often. But that's a whole other podcast. And even now we're just starting to see, like you said, LGBT characters actually making it into larger films, because that's taken, Ellen came out 97, and it's taken to now to get a superhero who is out. Like that's ridiculous. I mean, it's great in the sense that for 70 years before that you didn't have anything, but film of course moves slower than television in a lot of ways because there's so much money involved. But it's in the last 30 years we've seen insane amount of representation change in television particularly.
Yeah, I was going to say something like a good example I think of is in The Simpsons with the character of Smithers, because you soon how it's changed over here, because there used to be a lot of gay jokes involving him. It sort of lasted for quite a long while, and it's only till fairly recently when the character's been openly gay, and it's all like people like Mr. Burns is accepting him for his sexuality. And obviously I think now obviously a lot of shows don't make as many gay jokes. Something like Friends has been reevaluated for it, for the amount of gay jokes they've had as well.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but shows that have been on for a long time. You could like a Law and Order SVU.
Yeah.
Even in the time from when it started to now, it's much more conscientious of terminology it uses,
Yeah.
how it treats characters who are LGBT, and it's made strides to make it better.
Yeah.
It's still not great. It's still a Law and Order, and there's problems inherent in its existence, but it's better. And in Simpsons, it's better. It's taking steps not just for LGBT characters, but also with the Apu situation and all that. They're growing and learning, which is what you need from showrunners and writers and producers to recognize when there's a problem and then say, okay, we're going to fix this.
Yeah. I mean, it's like written down a few shows, because I feel like something like we talked about Brooklyn Nine-Nine in a previous podcast about how they've represented gay characters, because obviously Raymond was always gay, because obviously in the first episode it was a twist, it was meant to be a surprise that he was, to a lot of characters, that he was gay, because like Jake was surprised by it, and obviously later on Rosa came out as bi.
Yeah, and I think that's a show where, I mean, you had two straight actors playing Holt and his husband, both sensational actors. I have no complaints about that. They're great what they did. But, with Rosa, you have an out bisexual actress who came out, and then it was reflected in the character, which I think was a really nice touch to have that as well.
Yeah. And then you also got something, obviously Glee was quite popular with obviously because it wasn't Ryan Murphy, he's gay in real life, isn't he?
Oh, Ryan Murphy. Yes, yeah.
I'm guessing I touched on something I shouldn't have.
No, it's just Ryan Murphy's, and also a very interesting look at someone who's gay and who might not be the best at representation amongst all of the shows.
Yeah,
which is
I
interesting.
see.
Particularly, I mean, Glee's Glee. It's super camp, and you can't really take it too seriously. But it had some issues with trans representation, and issues with how he treated the lesbian couple on the show, and how it's a it was a problem of, you had a lighthearted comedy, and sometimes you dipped your toe into too dramatic waters and didn't quite have the depth to save yourself from
I see.
everything. But yeah, I mean, Ryan Murphy has been great in the sense that he's completely unafraid to put characters all across the LGBTQ spectrum on his shows.
Yeah.
Never apologizes for it. They're there. They're so different in type. And so that's actually one of the great things he's done is just thrown characters out there and said, just deal with it. You either get it or you don't.
I see. I think an area which still does have a lot of area of improvement is like children's shows, because I think the rules can be quite strict involving them, because a good example I could think of is The Legend of Korra. They hint that at the very end that she was in that she was going to enter into a relationship with another female character. I think with a lot of the actions beforehand, when they're showing them getting close, it could be interpreted that they were just good friends. They weren't having a romantic relationship.
Yeah, and even like younger children's programming too, they've made some strides in the last 10 years or so, where you're seeing more gay dads or gay moms, or there's a show on, I think it was Disney this year, where you had a young boy who's 10 or 11 who came out to his friends, and he's got a middle school boyfriend now. And it's obviously, the pushback is the whole think of the children thing, but I can promise you your kids are well aware of their sexuality, so it's not going to change anything. It just make them more happy and content with themselves if they see themselves when they're young. But it's slow going, and I get it, but it's gotten better. It's gotten a lot better.
Oh yeah, I was going to say certainly you'd have thought surely, because what a family is, it's changed a lot. You certainly would have thought more people would be like raised in by same-sex couples or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and think of how long it took to show divorced couples or single parents on television and have that not be taboo. So I get that it's going to take a minute to get the children's programming on board.
Or show something, what's it, was it like a rebel without a cause. The parents in that they're married, they were married, and they still slept in separate beds.
Well, it's like I Love Lucy for the entire almost the entire end of the series. They had two separate beds, and yet she got pregnant, and it was the first time they're allowed to say the word pregnant on television. Like it was a huge deal
Yeah,
because like how did that happen with their separate beds?
yeah. I'll go for also like a British some British example, because I think soaps over here are obviously quite big. They obviously show a lot of modern day issues. Try and so if it like just do it researching, like the first EastEnders had their first gay character like in the 1980s, and it was a big controversy when they had like the first gay kiss, because you can imagine like, yeah, it wasn't such in the times weren't so enlightened back then, and it was like caused a big moral panic that, you know, you had two men kissing when it really boiled down to like a peck on the cheek or something.
Oh yeah, I mean here our soaps are also they tend to be very conservative and run very conservatively. And there's a soap called Guiding Light that ended in 2010, and they for the last year had a essentially lesbian couple, kind of a will they won't they kind of deal, like soap stuff.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed to have the characters kiss at all. They were only allowed to hold hands, and these are adult women, and it's 2010, and the network wouldn't let them, or the producers wouldn't let them do it because they're afraid it was going to alienate the viewers. And that's 10 years ago.
Yes, because I think, well, I think we know we talked about it in a previous podcast, because like some states they still have very strict rules about well, they're still very hostile to LGBT community. Like we talked about in Georgia, they had they were going to have like some sort of anti-LGBT bill, which never went through because of like all the productions threatened to move out of Georgia. And yeah, there's a lot of shall we say sort of certainly a lot of southern states and plains, those are not plain, yeah, plain states.
Yeah, plains. It's the plains. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the one. They're still very socially conservative.
Yeah, and it's this idea of we don't want to alienate, I guess middle America is the idea. You don't alienate them. All right. Well, it's similar to we don't want to alienate big international markets. And at some point, you just have to say, this is my story, and I'm going to tell it the way I see fit.
Yeah.
And, that's how it's going to work, which is what someone like Ryan Murphy has done for all his ill. He's done that good for us.
Yeah. I'll just go back to the soap point. I do think there is one other extreme though with like Hollyoaks, because they've obviously tend to show gay characters. Fine. One of the famous stories was they had a couple, one couple, like one of them obviously one was still in the closet. I think it was quite clear that for the audience that character was gay. He liked another character who at the time had girlfriends, but then they both became a romantic couple. Yeah. If Hollyoaks though, it's all gone ridiculous. Like the amount of characters that suddenly are outed as gay, despite obviously like no indication beforehand. I'm sure you could say that obviously some people there is that case that gay people obviously might have the same sex, might have heterosexual relationships before coming out, but yeah, Hollyoaks, it does get a bit ridiculous.
I mean, hey, whatever floats their boat. But yeah, I mean, it's a soap, so you got to give it some leeway in that regard too. But if you could at least ground it somewhere in their character and but I mean, it's possible that you fall for a person of the same gender and then it doesn't work out and you realize that you just were attracted to that one person.
Yeah.
So it's a thing I've heard and I've seen happen. So
I just like to think with Hollyoaks, it's like this. If two people are in a room for long enough, regardless of sexuality, sexual preference, even their previous relationship with each other, they like hated each other. They will have sex. Yeah.
Put them on a desert island and it's gonna work out.
So yeah, and I think progress has been made. There is still a lot more to do. I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
our general conclusion here.
Yeah, we've come a long way in a very short time.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to complain about, you know, someone like Ryan Murphy and know that, you know, it's not gonna be the be all and end all of queer
Yeah.
representation on television. So
Yeah.
it's a plus. I'll take it.
Yeah. And I think on that point, to our we'll call it a wrap. So to our listeners, thank you very much. Please subscribe, like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that. And we'll speak. Hopefully, won't leave it so long for next time we do a podcast. Cheers. Bye.